facilitating the Artist Talk with Kordeena. LaMeia is often called a bridge builder, someone who holds space between institution and community. Her work as a community engagement consultant supports organizations such as VANS in feeling empowered in their approach to engage with community. LaMeia works to bring together new ideas across a number of fields. Her passion for art, design, and community keeps her busy with building, particularly in the local green economy as well. She's executive director at To Be Theatre, as well as the president of the board of Wonderneath Art Society and the North Preston Surf School. Welcome, LaMeia.
It's us now.
Yeah.
It's our time.
It's our time.
Yeah, I guess in some ways we would love to hold space to invite your questions. I'm going to ask a few questions and just kind of have a dialogue, I think, more so. The content in which we've taken in, I think it's a lot to dive into. But I think, in my, experience of knowing Kordeena and just kind of, thinking about the opportunity that it is even to have this discussion, I'm just kind of want to flow with where it goes, and want to invite that wisdom into the space and you folks to be as engaged in this as well. And if we have questions for you sometimes too, that might be a thing. I guess, I think we can just get into it. I think I have a question about how much time we have though, just in terms of...
We're not super limited.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to have that as the base.
You go free flowing.
Okay, free flow.
And I'll just say that if anyone needs to get up, go to the bathroom, leave, go home, relieve the consider, do what you need to do. Yeah. With respect.
For sure. So I'll just jump into it. I think there's, I was sitting there and I was like, what questions am I going to ask? What questions am I going to ask? And I think my mind was racing around, the fusion in some ways of the visual art practice that you have in terms of the pieces that you make, and the work that you have that folks have seen displayed, throughout the space. But making a film, I guess that was my first question of did you come to the filmmaking process I know that you kind of said earlier that you had so much footage and you wanted to put it together, but what motivated you to make the film essentially?
Well, I just wanted the story to be told. I didn't want to gatekeep anything. This is important information and there's always opportunity to learn. So I figured, hey, why not make a film? And then Nocturne was like, what about this liminal project between both worlds? I'm on it. And then I submitted it. And people want to watch it, want to view it, but they have to come to things like this to see it because, copyright.
Yes.
Things. But I just felt like these stories need to be told. Yeah.
How was it the first time that you screened it in terms of showing an audience? What did you feel in that moment?
The first time I screened it was at Nocturne. I had 2 viewings that day. The first viewing was early in the evening, around 5. And to be honest, a lot of white people came to the first one. And they were very shocked because a lot of things were going on and no one wanted to clap, no one wanted to say anything. It was very strict. But I wanted you to engage. If you've seen something, you can have a question, nothing. But when the group of black people came in, they were just all over it. They're like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. We need this in schools and stuff like that. And I'm like, whoa, what a different dynamic. I didn't want nobody to be afraid, but it just felt like the black people were more comfortable and know from firsthand experience. And it was just very different to see 2 different worlds, how they engaged in that movie.
Yeah, I'm thinking too also, it's my first time seeing it here today, and but not really in a way, because I think there's something so familiar about it that is I've seen this. But I think that, the way that I've kind of seen how, even just the beginning of how all those images of people were just it was so I knew everybody pretty much, and it was just just to see the pace and the so it was kind of I think just the opening parts of that and the significance and I didn't even, how did you choose people, how did you how did you kind of come to these are the people that we're going to put in, and
Yeah, I just went to Google and
Yeah.
I typed in like influential Black people,
Mhm.
influential African Nova Scotian, or just African Nova Scotian people, Black loyalists, refugees, and there's all these people that I've known and I've seen around the community just came up, and these are the same people who actually paved the way for me to even be here, to even do these kinds of things. So I wanted to pay homage to them and just put some light on that.
It's super powerful. And then again, like in terms of having seen or heard about like, you know, the demonstrations and the work that had been happening, you know, I think seeing it from the angle that you kind of presented it is also a different view. I think that it like picks up on the energy, and I don't know if there's a sense of like, did folks feel that? Like, you know, how does seeing, you know, things that you might have heard of on the media, but seeing it from the perspective of like, you know, from it being filmed from that way, like, you know, I think that's kind of like a different point of view.
Yeah, and I wanted to keep it like in chronological order, like from the beginning, like George Floyd right straight through, and that's why I included the media portions, because I couldn't leave that information over, though you actually get in the backstory. So all of those things came into play, and it's literally that whole first maybe like 6 months of this police brutality, stand up for Black people thing.
How did you kind of think about incorporating the 1991 or 1991? Had you been familiar with those incidences before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like growing up, those were like really main topics in the family. About like racism's been here forever, and I was only one at the time, but my mom like knows the man that was like assaulted, and that conversation just kept happening. And the same things that happened in 91 are literally still happening right now. And this doesn't seem like we're actually moving anywhere, so I wanted to give people an idea about before and now how things have not really changed. We're still in the same fight, who knows for how long. But.
I'm thinking so much about Kate's role in...
Yeah, she's the activist. Yeah, Kate.
And just all of the different ways that we see Kate's, like, you know, the work, right? It's really the work and the, you know, like the conversation that, like, Stephen McNeil, like the apologies, like just the interaction between the state, the government, and the people, and like just that like the dynamics. Like I almost can feel the tension coming from the film, and so I think it really kind of captures that. And you know, having you all in the room, like, how does it feel to like rewatch that? Like, does it, you know, and some, like, because that's like time has passed since then, but you know, how does it feel to like rewatch it?
It just makes
you can
you can
yes.
I have to like rewatch like specifically the apology part.
Yeah.
Nothing's happened since then. He said the apology and then he dipped.
Yeah.
A whole new premiere, like that was it. No one's even touched on it ever. So.
And I honestly, that's the first time I ever seen that apology. Heard bits of it,
because that announcement was for something totally different.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I want to apologize to African Nova Scotian community. And we're like, what?
Yeah.
I'm texting her, I'm like, what's happening? Where's this apology coming from? She's like, I don't know. Like, you're here, and this is for something totally different. But, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, K-Mac.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting watching myself back. It feels like a million lifetimes ago. And number one, I'm like, how's that everywhere?
You were
everywhere. What else was I doing? Like, nothing else. Yeah, I was doing nothing else, I guess. Like, wow, really? And then also, something that I noticed about myself is like, the tension is real. I'm getting more and more angry. Like, I can see it, I can hear it. The patience that I have for conversations becomes little to none because I've been doing it for how many hours at that point. And similarly with the apology, so the background started out as if there was a design team, a justice design team.
Yes.
We were going to redesign justice, okay? And it was a bunch of random Yeah, it was super peaceful. It wasn't about that. It was
Well,
not about that.
yeah, I think that's what's really noticeable is the joy, and I think even again seeing it from the inside, and I kind of only can describe it as inside because of the way that that's what it feels like to me. I don't know if there's another way that I would describe that, but just from that point of view and the dancing and the joy that was existing. But then again, the question about like. Talking about crip walking and the bloodstones, like it's like, it's just bloodstones. I don't know.
Yeah, you like it.
Bloodstones. Just like what happens then after, you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of one of 7,000 people is a lot of people.
Yeah, with no altercations at all.
Yeah, and so there's an interesting like visual aspect that I see there that we haven't seen. Realist like. For that, you know what I mean? We might see that for a concert or for a hockey game, but but that many people came together. What did that feel like? What did it feel like to be in that space and place and to kind of have that like moment that probably like lasted for time?
Yeah, they called Clayton, like, you got to shut this down every hour. It didn't get shut down until 11:45.
Yeah.
So, he's like, yeah, in a second. And seconds turned into hours. So,
like, in terms of holding space in that way, though, like, can you remember, like, parts of what you were feeling in the, like, if we had words?
You go ahead.
Yeah, cool. I mean, that's a once-in-a-lifetime feeling. You know what I mean? That's a once-in-a-lifetime feeling. Like, and the fact that you described the middle is so interesting because so many people, I was in so much trouble.
So much trouble.
He's like, I had so many phone calls. People were like, what were you doing? What were you playing? What were you letting people do? What about the masks? I was like, I don't know. Yeah,
no one got sick.
I don't know. It was cool, It was. You don't really get that many opportunities in your lifetime to like be in a community in that way, and like because people were there, regardless of why you stayed, regardless of what your political stance was, you were there because a Black life had called you to the streets, and that was the pinnacle, that was the key, the cornerstone, that was it. And so the middle was really like Black songs by Black DJ, lots of Black people saying really Black things, doing Black dances, and so nothing else on the outside really mattered. But when I went to the outside, we were completely surrounded by white folks, like huge barricades between us and like thousands of police officers. And I was like, that's why we actually get to have this joy in the middle, because there's white bodies that have understood the assignment, and they've kept us actually really safe, and that was also really cool.
Yeah, and I think the visuals and that, in some ways of why this work is so important in terms of like all the work that you do in terms of the creative aspects being brought together, because I think, and with the power of film, because then it kind of shows that, and that is what's documented in history. And I want to ask a question about like, what it's been like to have like the children present to witness and to be a part of that, because, that history and the way that it plays, in some ways we're talking, there's lots of themes around ancestors and standing on their shoulders. What does it feel like for you to have this work happening and your young people, your children, to witness it?
Well, they come from this generation where everything's like social media this, TikTok that, and they come to us with like the issue. Oh, did you see this? The police did this to this person, to that person. I had no choice but to involve you now.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to come to any protest you want to, because you are actually standing up for your rights. You are a young Black person. And to even have them in there, it's like life-changing. Now they all talk about, I want to go to a protest. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to be like KK. So the youngest one, Blessy, she's like really into it. She started going when she was like 2. And people call her a protest baby. And she just shows up and starts screaming. And I'm like, yeah, this is you. You're going to be taking the torch after this. It's going to be you doing these things. And hopefully by the time she gets there, things will be a little chiller.
I think the way that it's documented too, because in our communities we hear lots of stories about how folks paved the way for us, and how we know that that there was work, there was people going to meetings, town halls, and we also see some of those visuals when we think about Africville and we watch that. So I think about this aging in that way and having that place in history, and what that represents. And I'm wondering, like, does it inspire folks who maybe are a little bit hesitant to go to a protest, because there's a lot of people who are, Like, do you think that this has a, does that change people's perception of what happens at a protest? Because sometimes people see them like, as a lot of the other things with George Floyd and all of this, like people were literally burning and like looting and all of that. And there was a global unrest. And, I think to see us kind of play a role in that, but we like did it differently. Do you think that like putting this out there kind of shows protest and in a different light, or make people even like more curious about that? Like, what was even responses from people like in your neighborhood after
the protest?
These things are happening?
Well, I've never really went to protests. I obviously know that they happen, but I'm like, I am gonna be supportive over here. Like, I don't really want to be in it. But then once I started to be in it, I started to get everything. See this person over here, see this police officer coming this way, this person got sunglasses on and being really suspicious. Yeah. And I just felt like, whoa, this is totally different. Let me film this. Now, people are like, how'd you get all that? Where were you at? I was at the top. I was at the front getting everything. And it was very different. I didn't think it was going to be the way it was. I always thought it was going to be like, oh, riots every minute, fighting. But then I realized I got a black son. That man called up for his mother, and he's like 40 something. Yeah. That could have been my kid. So,
It's because, I hadn't.
The cancer's coming out. The cancer son. Okay.
I just because I don't even my engagement with the imagery. It hadn't been much, honestly, because I just couldn't take it. And I think that the film is really brave for putting it all in there, and the warnings that kind of come. I was in some ways I'm what am I going to see after this? So it's just this thing of just being ready. And then I just don't know if you can ever be ready for that. I don't know if we can ever be ready to witness. But I mean, in every single time something new comes over my body in terms of how I feel and what I think about. And so I think that's again, the power of why, making this work and putting it out there is so crucial, because, we can internalize it, and not that we can forget, but it's almost that we don't engage with the visuals and the graphic aspects of it. But it's almost important to do that and to engage with that, even though the media stops talking about it, because I think that it does kind of really remind us that there is this injustice continuously, and then it just kind of get reminded of the names and the people, and just to kind of keep that present. So I really valued that was a part that was brought into it, and I know that probably was there criticism, feedback, was. What has been the response around and maybe people who's in terms of the silence might be a way that people are
it's very intense.
It's intense, but almost so necessary in a way. Yeah. So have you had anyone that's been giving any feedback around whether it was too much or not? I don't know.
No, not really.
Yeah.
A lot of people just took it as it came, but I did have an artist talk with Nocturne. And one of the questions was, why did you include it? Yeah. I don't want to gatekeep anything. This is real life. These are real people. These things did happen. Yeah. Their stories need to be told, and we need to be reminded that these things happen. So that's why I included them, and it is very intense. I had to edit those parts and put them this way and put them in order, and it was very hurtful to watch. I watched it 100 times. Over and over again, I started the same feeling oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Yeah. That could have been me. I could have been in Walmart with my kids. Oh my God, that could have been my son. My son's at the mall right now. It just constantly just kept hurting myself. But I had to do it because I had to tell the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't cry on me.
No, I'm not going to cry again. But I'm just feeling it's so real, because I think sometimes, as the person who has to tell those stories, and when you feel called to make something or you have to put it out there, the art isn't always pretty, and the stories are not always the stories. We're not always painting butterflies and rainbows and clouds and these beautiful clouds. I love these clouds. This is giving me lots of moments of just in those hard moments of this, right? so, you know, I think it is all of that heart that goes into the editing process, the picking, the curation, and then again, all of this exists online.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, this wouldn't have been, you know, possible. You know, think about all the undocumented, you know, instances that have happened. And so I think there is something about, like, how there's, like, photo, image, like, phone, there's, like, pictures, there's, like, all of the mix of the media, I think, you know, is really nice, and how it all got brought in together. Yeah. Is there any questions from the audience? Yeah, I'm on a roll, but...
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the intimacy that was the lens in that film. And I think that, like, you can really tell your perspective is one of a lot of love and a lot of care. And that really came through in the film. Like, your relationship, I think, is under the whole structure of the thing, which I really appreciated. It made it very heartfelt for me. And also, like, to Kate, like, you created a space where everyone could come out when no one could see each other. That was so crucial to me personally, and to everyone I know. That we were in such isolation at that time. I think I forget that I didn't see anyone except for when I went to those protests. That was the only time I ever saw my community in 2 years. And I can't tell you how much I appreciated that, and how those protests felt different than any other protest I had been to before, because there was that liveliness in it, and because there was that energy, and there was that motivation for change, and you created a pathway, and you created the assignment for white people to do. We didn't, I felt like I had agency when I showed up to those, and I felt like I was invited in to make a difference, in whatever small way that I could. And I see that in the film. I see how this protest movement in Halifax is different than the other organizations, and I know how frustrating it must be to see this and see what has happened since, which is not very much.
That's why the film needs to be out more, I think, to remind, to hold that space, not to cut you off, but this is why it exists, right? And that...
Especially in this space, like, looking at it in this context of the Black Loyalist Heritage Society, like the museum, and seeing the injustice that has always happened and continues to happen, and it really reminds us of our responsibility, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I agree. It was interesting to see so many moments that I witnessed parts of that I was at, you know, like, and so some of it, like, even seeing, like, moments of you, Kate, and being like, oh, yeah, that I know where I was in relation to where you were. And so sometimes that got in through my head, and I wasn't always there. You were always there.
Yes.
But, yeah, and what Benny is saying is about that feeling of connection, that feeling of not much compelled me to go into a crowd right then. It's hard to remember now, standing here unmasked and inside. This is a very new thing for me.
Yeah.
This is only in Birchtown.
Yeah.
But being in a crowd was a very big choice to make.
Right.
Like, and, you know, every time I went, and if I was meeting people, we would talk about what our plan was for our safety. We would talk, and not in the way you would normally do with a protest, because there's the normal protest conversation, but then it was also are you comfortable with that? Like, do you want to, where can we be? Where are you okay to be? And how can we do all of that for each other? And but it was so important to show up and to be present and to take the assignment.
And then when you showed up, everyone came around with their little hand sanitizers and masks, and it was like, hey, what do you need?
Yeah.
You know, that environment was really
But yeah, does anyone else have any questions or things that are bubbling in there?
I keep wondering about what the process must have been like for you. I'd love to hear more about how you made the film. I feel like we were kind of you moved us through a journey, and some of the footage that is from the public realm, and then some footage like you folks have talked about where you kind of like recognize those moments and those places. And then what's really kind of struck or stayed with me is at the end of the film, this is kind of what I it's kind of framed as this like debrief session with Kay and Jericho and is it
Trey.
Yeah. That is such an intimate space, and it's so in stark contrast to a lot of that other imagery. And some of the news footage especially is something that I wasn't tapping into, like CTV or that kind of stuff, and so it's interesting to see those really kind of the reflection, the kind of like white colonial media talking head, and then to be in the center of the protest, and then in the conversations that happened between the three of you afterwards, like that was such a different. It's also really kind of vulnerable space, right? Because it's like right after, I guess, or was it right after the apology that the why? But and a really kind of like revealing space as well, right? Because you're kind of in a safe environment where the three of you can kind of like hash out what just happened and express frustrations, and that was so unlike where we started. So it really moved us through this kind of like so love to hear about the process, and then how making the film might have influenced your time here during residency and engaging with history here through artifacts and story. And
What's your first question?
the first question was
the process.
The process, yeah.
Well, I said I had so much footage, and it's like off the whims. Like, I'm gonna make this 5 minutes, and then I didn't have 5-minute footage. I had so much other stuff, and I just want to put everything in. Then I had to start over. I was like, I have to think about this from start to the end. And so, like, the flow of it is really the whole entire story. And talking to the game changers is actually when things started to like die down and no one started to do anything. So I wanted to include those things to bring people back. Like, this is the reason why we are doing this. And the conversation was actually like 2.5 hours long. There was a lot. Kate's like, how long is this? Like 20 minutes right now, but 2 hours of us just talking. It was very chill, but yeah, we talk like that all the time. So, and your second question?
How did making the film influence the residency here at your time in residency?
This film in particular, I don't know, just like on my CD, but my most recent film is called Chasing God. It was in the Emerging Lenses Festival, and that is a short film. It's 10 minutes. But that story is focused on two siblings running towards freedom. So it's very like abstract and experimental, like those small shots, like feet running through the grass and water. And when I applied for this, I was like, I'm gonna do that same thing here, like a part 2. And I've just been running around in the grass with the ticks, taking shots. Yeah. So I want to do a part 2, and the part 2 is going to be a love story between lesbians. Like, hello. Yeah, I want to share stories that like never been told. Wow. And there cannot be like no lesbians in 1700s. Like, that's a lie. So let me just make the story real, and that's what I'm doing here now. I got a class of footage, didn't really put it together yet, but got one last piece, and then you'll probably see it again.
It's amazing.
Well, I was going to ask, I mean, you just kind of talked about it, but I was just curious about, the residency here, like how has it been?
It's been great, aside from the reception, but like the retreat's just down the street, it's like deep in the woods, and it's not like really good reception, that's my only issue. But when I get here, I can do whatever I want, because I can make phone calls, I can answer emails, I can do everything. But being in this space, like reading all the history, and actually knowing that I have family that came through here, it was very emotional. And I was like, this is, why me? Why did they choose me? But I've been doing a lot of like genealogy stuff, and a lot of that genealogy stuff keeps popping up. It's like the universe is listening, put me in situations and places like this for me to learn. And I love it here. It's been a month, and it seemed like a long time at first, and now it's like, that's a month already.
I remember the first post, because I don't think I knew that you got the residency, because I remember seeing the posting go out. I even thought about it at one point. I was like, should I apply? Can I do this? Like, I can't.
That's exactly how I felt. I was like, I had no experience, but here.
I think for me, it was just a time thing. It's like, is 2B going to let me come out here for a whole month and like not come back? Because I'll be like loving it here, and I'll be, anyways. So, but I think, just in the sense of like, and I was like, because I don't know if this was the first post that you made, but when you posted about the baby that you were, was that the first post that you made from here? Yeah, because like social media, following social media, all of it. But I think that I was just like, Dee Dee's there. Oh my gosh. Like, and it was just like the way that you even said, like, I don't know your story. And I knew you were in it. Like, I guess there was a thing is like, oh, Dee Dee's there. Like, there's something about this experience. And I think that means a lot for our community too, because to know that someone who you've been following their work and that you've been kind of like, connected to, and even more recently for us too, like just connecting more recently on art things and videography and all that, just to know that you were here meant a lot. And I think that was kind of just like, and then the month, and then now and I find my way back here to do this. I'm like, what? Okay. Yeah. But, just that thing around what it means for community, for Kordeena to be here. You know what I mean? I think that's also really huge, and to know that you're doing that research and making art. Like,
I didn't come down here with like any real plans. It's like, I gotta be here to actually know what I'm gonna do. Yeah. And Braden showed me the box of all these like pictures with no names and no dates, and then there's pictures that just popped to me. It was like, I need to do something. I have this connection. I had no idea who you were. Let me just paint you. And I'm working on those paintings right now. So.
And I just I guess like the sharing out with your Instagram people, just to be connected with you on the journey has been amazing too, because I think there's a lot of people who want to get down here and want to experience because we know that the Birchtown exists, but in the city, and like we're so removed, right? And so there is this like thing of what this does to kind of bring us together here, and knowing that all this history is here for us is like really amazing. So thanks for sharing your posts and your info, your process.
I'll share the complete collection.
I can't wait to see that.
Question about like touching on what LaMeia was talking about before about your kids being at the protests and like ancestry, lineage. How does it feel to now be in a position of creating history? Because what you've made here is akin to the documentaries that I've watched about Halifax racism, from the 90s, and the 80s, and the 50s, and every decade since, and you and Kate are now building history, and you're making something new, and you're leading change. And at the end of the film, you see the weight of that. And I'm wondering how that affects you and your art making.
Well, I literally just wing it. If it feels good, I'll do it. And that's how I've been creating art since, I said 6 years, you said it's longer than that. If it feels good for me, I'll just continue to do it. Like, obviously there's some sort of force that brings me to these opportunities to create in the way that I do. So I'm just gonna keep going. I don't really have any ideas about anything. It just pops in at that time, and I have to finish it. That's the Capricorn. I have to finish it, and that's pretty much it. But I never really thought about like me making history at all.
Okay.
But I guess I am. No, I'm just existing.
The thing too, in the end where we see all the names listed of all the folks and the people, and
that was the hardest part.
Yeah.
Of the whole film, there's like over 200 names in there.
Yeah.
And it was so
you
hard
could
to
see it.
Like, Mom, who's this person? You know that person? Like, oh yeah, from the so and so I grew up with. I'm like, okay, but I need to know her name. Like, Yeah, like going through like names of people and like emailing other like black folks, like who's this person? Can you tell me who this person is? Making all these phone calls. That's like over 200 names. It took so long.
And you know what it reminded me of? I looked around and I saw all these names, right? So there's similarity between those names and these names. And so I just kind of had that moment at the end where it's just kind of like that, like, whoa, coming together moment of like, and even just like the tidbit of information in the beginning that's shared in terms of what the number is of us here now and who came, the number that folks that came, and just like the growth of the communities as well. So it's just a lot of people, a lot of names, a lot of history, a lot of stories, right? So, and it, you know, it reminds me of just like, you know, even the opening, you know, parts around like the dedication to your children and just like the stories, the true stories, and just to, you know, kind of be in that story. So I think in some ways it's like, you know, the storytelling and you writing yourself and us into history. Yeah, I mean, I guess I loved in the part of the process where Trey like turns the question back onto the reporter.
Yeah.
And, you know, just that if you had a magic wand, like I was just like, oh no, this is not.
When he said that's something I hate, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, wow.
Because I was like the magic wand aspect, I think even just it's like, we're gonna do magic here now. But it's like, but also, and what was his answer? Like I can't.
He said change people's hearts.
Change people's hearts. Okay. Yeah, I didn't quite hear what
it was.
What
change people's
hearts. Okay, because
really emotional about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Bruce was. Is that Bruce? What's his name? That's not Bruce.
I know.
Anyways, he was.
I mean, the other thought that I have is like that's like just the way that the lawn chairs were set up in front of. I'm like, we gotta just do that again. Like it just was so boss. Like you was sitting there in the like. Well, it was just like I loved it. I didn't see that. Like, why didn't I see that?
They always used to ask us where we wanted to eat, and I would pick in front of the library. You gotta come down to the thing.
Yeah.
Come down, come sit.
I think that the scene to me, like, you know, I guess that's one of the things I want to ask you, like, what's your favorite scene in that, or like what parts of do you really resonate? But I really resonate with that one because of I think the space that was given, like, you know, like just in terms of like. It didn't seem edited or anything. It just felt like it was true. Because I you know, sometimes they try to chop up parts of interviews, but there's no way that you can chop up any of that. You know what I mean? There's a question asked and there's answers given. Like it's very straightforward in that way. And I think for me that question was one that was like, oh, this is a basic question. But in some way, it does kind of get to a place of like what one thing, if there was a place to start. And I did kind of think that was like a little bit of like an interest in like a way to try to get at that. And so not an easy question at all. I think Trey was amazing in how he answered. I don't know how I would have answered that question. I really just don't.
Trey was pretty mad. So.
Yeah. Yes,
and
exactly.
You all three of you in that interview just were like not playing
No,
the game.
no.
And so articulate and like
It was like
kind of just like they're like, can you simplify this and just say one uplifting thing?
Yeah.
And to hear you all just like really explain it or like say what you need to say in ways that was actually like super accessible to like anyone watching it and like to probably gonna make like, you know, whatever people are gonna like anyone could be watching the movie, but also not dumbing it down at all.
Right.
You did really good.
Yeah.
That's Trey's like, he was always the kid, because he's the youngest of us, so he didn't know any of the rules.
Right.
So he didn't even like get the concept of break from there. It's like there were meetings where he would stand up on the table and be like, I'm right here! Like he called
very
a bus shelter, and I was like, get down! Down. No? Okay. So yeah, he's like with age, he'd be like, well, what would you say? And it's like, actually, they called us here to get you. Yeah, that's not true. Okay, yeah. What would you say? You know? Yeah, so he brought and brings a really special energy, which is like completely untamed and also completely unbridled. And like, he just doesn't know that there's any parameters to play in. So he doesn't play with them. Yeah. And that's kind of like, whoa.
Yeah, the dynamic between the three of you is, and then also you filming in certain parts, like, because you can see that that's, you know, like that dynamic is one that is really special. And I think, you know, that the way, the questions that you're all in too, you know, together, and the way that you're having your moments of debrief and all that, it kind of shows how you kind of get that, the ability to keep going, I guess, in some ways. It's like, you know, what happens after that interview, you know, like, you know, like we go do another one, right? You know, like we're tomorrow, that waking up, we don't get, like Dorico's saying, like after the protest, I'm driving home and I'm in my body, like wondering if I'm going to be pulled over, like, like those realities. I think that there's like lots of undertones of like, you know, what is the truth that's being spoken in this work. And do you have a particular part of the film that, you know, you resonate, that every time it gets you just like, I love this part of it? Like, is there any one part of it that you, or particular scenes that you're kind of just like get excited about every time, or laugh at, or feel?
Well, okay, there's two.
Yeah.
One I'm like really excited about is the block party. And seeing how everybody's just like vibing together. It was actually a celebration of life. Because as you know, like being black, and we have funerals and stuff like that, we party. We remember. We're not sad. We may be feeling sad, but we just bring the joy in what they would want. And being in that moment when it was like no chaos, no nothing, it just felt very good. That's like my favorite part. But like the most touching part is near the end when Susie Hansen's singing the Black National Anthem. From there right straight to the end, it just does something to me. I cry every time, and I made it. I've seen it so many times, it's over by now, but it just hits me in the same spot all the time. And my kids love that one particular song, and they sing it like her and everything, think that she's the one that made the song, but like, no. But this, like, those two parts are my favorite.
There's a lot of symbolism in the work, and I think that song particularly, and the songs in general, like the freedom songs, and just the way that they are what keep us going. You know, I think that I'm just like, I still don't know all the words to the Black National Anthem, but it don't matter, because the thing is that like you're still there and you're like, you're singing it, because sometimes they just shorten it and they don't do all the verses.
Susie did all the verses, and
I know.
Before I even recorded that, I didn't even know the whole thing. I just knew, like, they showed us in school, like the first verse, and watching her sing it over and over again, like I know the whole song now. But they don't teach you that in school. Like Black History Month, they barely even play it. And I guess too, also like just to share insight on that, like that anthem, you know, kind of is the honoring thing that we sing, and also we have, and that's like global. I think it's probably global within the Western context more so, but you know, I think it is like a, you know, like a national anthem in a way. And so that is like kind of ceremonial, I would say, and the way that it kind of gets in the body too, like the vibrations of that, and depending on how each person sings it, because they sing it always in a different way, but there are like melodies that are kind of very similar and that are really comforting in those moments where, you know, you would have all of these like tough like conversations and protests and all that stuff, and then the song to basically like soothe that and to like bring it out more and to just like let us sink into it. So I think the use of the music in the film also really kind of hold it true to who we are, and achieves that really well. Listening to those songs in this space was a totally different feeling. Like the chills were like no other chills I've ever had. And I was like saying to Kay, I was like, oh my God, it's making me emotional. Whoa, like the impact of the words and where we're standing, like it's very real. Impactful. Any other questions?
Just on a roll here. What's next? I know you did talk about some of your projects and the work that you're writing. I mean, so you already kind of spoke to it, but is there any other?
Well, I want to do a Genlib too, and I want that to focus on the homeless encampments.
Yes.
My girl here got arrested for saying, "What's your name?" And like obviously it was illegal to even do something like that, but they arrested so many people. And I want those stories, but you know, trials and things. I can't do it yet, but I have footage on that too.
Right.
I have so much footage being at protests since 2021. There hasn't been really many this year, but I want a Genlib too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this time I'll just like make my own beats.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, you know that.
About that, how you're saying, because you can't like just put it online.
Yeah.
Has like, do you know if there's any like avenue to like get it in the library or get it somewhere where people could like?
Yeah, like
check it out, or
there's
what
things
is
I
it?
can like sign up for it, but they don't really give you like the songs that you want. And creating this, like, there's specific sounds that I want that will convey this message properly.
Mm-hmm.
And just going to Google and finding like a free song, it just doesn't cut it. But the instrumental in there, I made that.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna put C Murder, down for my niggas, but it's like, okay. So I just made my own sound, and I wanted to be like
beat maker
strong.
Yeah, got so many talents. Like
I just was picking things up, and then I graduated from YouTube Academy. So
yeah,
just go in there, how to make a beat, and then they show you. So yeah,
gotta get it how you live. Oh yeah, what supports do you need? Like in some ways, like what do you think that organizations or people, or like in some ways, like what's needed to support? You can talk more generally about artists in general, if you don't want to just make it personal, but like what helps, the process? Like what can people do? Like what's the needs? You know what I mean? If you could name a few.
Well, what would be helpful for me and beneficial for me is just that somebody believed in me enough to just give me a wad of money and be like, create.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to like pay you back and then make this whole application for something.
Right.
Like if you believe in me that much, you know the power that I have and the reach that I am gonna have by making any kind of art.
Yeah.
I feel like that is like a need. I'm like a sponsor child or something like that.
Yeah.
But
I
that's like my one thing. Can someone just go here, make whatever you want, and then that way I can involve more people, like do interviews with people and pay them for their time and stuff. Mm-hmm. But like the process of applying for applications and grants and stuff, oh my God, there's so much work, and I don't even know if I'm going to get it. Mm-hmm. So I have to like scrap certain ideas and stuff. But I usually just try to do things on my own with my own money, and it will come back to me eventually. Like
Resources.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to. Yeah, we were having a great talk about that on the car ride up here. Trying to figure it out. I think. Yeah. Well, the other thing, we were kind of talking about the barriers to application processes and all that kind of stuff. And also, like, if this is not stuff that, is deemed as priority work or not fitting in the boundaries or the guidelines that folks put out in terms of, like, it's really hard to make this work and to do it. And it's really a lot of labor, I think. And sometimes, I wonder if community even knows, all of what goes into this work. You know what I mean? I think there's, we certainly, have seen and heard that there were lots of things happening, but just how much was happening. And like, even Kate seeing herself, like, kind of, like, wow, like, it's just taking that moment, like, because when you're in it, you're just in it. Yeah. And, we've been in it, and, so I think there's parts of me that, like, think about the retreat spaces and the opportunities to, like, recharge and to kind of come back at it, because there really is no money being given to us to do this. And so what are the things that make it happen? It really comes from a desire to kind of keep pushing the work forward. But I do think there's a lot that communities can do to make it, to kind of like eliminate those barriers. And so, that's kind of why I asked that question about what's needed, and because I think that it's like a thing that folks can kind of go home with and think about how they can contribute or how we can contribute to making things happen. Because, we could be in rooms, we could be having conversations, and I think that's one of the themes too about like the seeing Justin Trudeau down there kneeling in his suit. Like, you know what I mean? Just that idea of like, yeah. And I love that. It's like, I don't want you out here in your suit. I want you in your office doing the thing. And it's like, oh yeah, like it's like those are the moments of like, who is in power? Who does get to make these decisions? Who is influencing this policy? And it just like reminds us that, there's other people who have a role to play in this. It's certainly brought up for me, just like, oh, I should check into like what this apology meant and who picked it back up.
Nobody picked that up.
So it's just like, oh, that was dropped. And I didn't even know that it was dropped because I didn't even know that it happened. So it's just like, oh my gosh. Like, it's like but it happening and it being on record that it was said means something too, right?
And Ferguson.
Yeah.
So Tim Houston was involved.
Yeah. But it was like, well, you know, Dorico he's working kind of in certain areas, but you know, who knows? It's just, but it does leave these questions in your brain of like, how can people, you know, say things like this and like make such grandiose statements, and just kind of like dip, you know, like it's just a really, it's part of what continues the frustration and like and what are we going to do about it? You know, I think that's what it kind of comes back to, a conversation about what are we as a community going to do about that and the lack of, because otherwise we're sitting in complacency, which we don't want to be, right? So I feel like in all of this, it's been such a personal reflection, asking me questions about what I'm going to do and what I am doing and how it's contributing, but also that was it. There's a new version of that now. You know what I mean? In terms of like, there's a new version and there has to be a new approach, a new strategy in this next part of this liberation and this struggle, right? So it's super inspiring.
Thanks.
And yeah, I'm so thankful that I get to be here and experience all this and be talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for showing up.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm just thinking in your paintings there's a lot of like indexing of fashion and adornment, and I'm sitting as I kind of like have been resting and looking at this beautiful piece that's in glass back here, so I'm wondering, has your own fashion and practice as a designer been influenced by spending time with images that might be like petticoat heavy, I'm not sure, but kind of with the paintings that you've been making, has there been any kind of influence or interfacing that you've noticed?
No, not that I've noticed. Like the clothes that I make, it's very political.
Yeah.
And the paintings that I make, I mean, yeah, they're political too, but they're also like renditions of specific things. Like this one with the earring, it's a rendition of Girl in the Pearl earring, like Girl in the Bamboo earring, like why can't it be black? So I just wanted to bring those things in, like the hair stuff is something that black girls go through all the time. But like to say that they're like crossover like clothing and stuff like that, no, not really. I should, but I didn't really think about it. Yeah.
And the this one here, I'm just looking at this piece here. It's like,
comic?
oh my, yeah. It's like, oh my God, did you see her hair? Question marks. Like it's like like in lots of ways reflecting reality and like real life, and just this question, can I touch it? You know, like just all of those things that people really resonate with. And so, you know, in some ways I'm kind of curious about like, what do folks who don't have those experiences kind of like see in that, you know, in those, in the work in some ways, like, you know, are folks able to read it as like, oh, I know what's going on here, you know, or is it kind of just like, oh, this is interesting, like, because the works are stories in itself. So that's just my experience of like, you know, the work. I guess I kind of had a similar question about like how much of the film stuff is the backdrop for some of the stuff that you're creating, but I know it's all happening at different times.
Yeah, like painting for me, like I started out painting first. It actually came from my oldest daughter, Queen. When she was like younger, she just never felt pretty. She's like, I'm ugly, I'm too dark. Most of everybody in our family is light skinned, and there was like no beauty for her to like adopt. And so I was like, I'm your mother, I gotta do something. So I started painting naked black women, and that just turned into black women all together and different black people, and she wants all my stuff now. She has to pay because she's gonna be a track star soon. But that's where the paintings came from, and the clothing actually came from Kate because she was going to see Justin, and homie Jay, and she was going to Ottawa, and she was like, I want something that like says who I am, and we were trying to like go to like local shirt designers, like, oh, it's gonna take 3 weeks. We got 2 days. So it's like, I'm gonna get a shirt, I'm gonna get some letters, I'm just gonna screen print it, and then I came up with unapologetically black, and then also a black as fuck t-shirt, and problematically black that she shook Justin's hand in, just like shake, shake. And ever since people seen her in the stuff, they just wanted more. And then once I started to like sit in my queerness. I was like, I was never in the closet in my life. Like, I was like, I love Kate. Let me just, hello everyone.
Yeah.
And let me just make this close because I'm not afraid of who I am. And a lot of people like, oh, I want that shirt, unapologetically queer. I love it so much. And then I got like 2X LGBTQ, and yeah, people are just, political stuff.
A recent candle collaboration too.
Yeah, that I didn't even lie. I didn't even know what I was getting into with that candle thing. I have a collaboration with Fire and Desire Candle Co. They're a venue that participates in Taking Black, and they make soy wax candles. And they wanted to partner, and I was like, yeah, sure. I was like, they were like, can we say it unapologetically black? I was like, yeah, it can be unapologetically black candle. I don't care. Here is the picture. Make it something like this. I was just very hands off with it. Gave them the scent. Then we put some. There was like 20, and they were gone in an hour. They're like, oh my god, I want this. Where can I find it? I'll sell me somebody else's one. I'm like, we can't do that. Like, we'll make more. But the scent is sandalwood, vanilla, honey. I don't even got one.
I don't either. I thought I was going to be able to get some at the market this week. Is there going to be some?
No. The market might even be postponed because it's going to rain.
Okay.
But it's going to be postponed to the next week.
I thought that I was going to be able to get a candle. But anyways, I get Fire and Desire candles, so like I'm a regular. So I just assumed that I was going to be able to get candles, but maybe I shouldn't.
But we're going to make more now that we know that people.
I just love so the thing about that is like the scent, the aromatherapy, like the art is in everything. And I think that's kind of like the real beautiful part of what Shinibian has been able to do is kind of showcase there's no bounds and boundaries on how you can create and just kind of like to hold that brand and to grow it and to like, you know, within the 6 years, and then also to kind of see the future of it as well. And in terms of like building that culture into community and making your process so transparent has like really opened up everybody's eyes in a way, and will continue to open up more. Also wanted to kind of shout out that you're looking to kind of have the resources to support like having a storefront. So that's been one of the things that you've been
that's the hardest thing right now.
In Halifax?
Yeah. Like we have so many vendors. Like I know 60 black businesses, and they show up from time to time every time we do a market. But the thing is, since COVID happened, we had to stop. We weren't essential. We were special events. We have mouths to feed. We have houses and stuff. And if we had a store, then I could have just regulated those rules. Come in with a mask, come without a mask. But it's like such a high demand because people really want to be supportive of like black businesses, but there's nowhere you can go and buy Fire and Desire candles. You have to wait till a market comes or contact them personally.
And they're doing deliveries all the time all over the city.
And if there was a store, you can just come in.
Image and stock.
Yeah. So that's really why I want the store.
You're gonna get the store.
Yeah, I'm like,
Where you can sell like a bunch of different.
yeah, like I just want to fill it with black vendors and their products. And if you want to get a gift, go get the candle or go buy that T-shirt. You don't have to wait for a market. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. The bricks and mortar, I think we're really starting to see, especially after the pandemic, how important that is to have a place that people can go to.
Yeah.
To find things and talk to people.
Yeah.
And I think particularly like in the North End and Gottingen, and that's community where
I would love it for it to be in the North End, even on Gottingen Street. Like people are out here fundraising for pubs and stuff like that, and they get the money in 2 days. But I want something that's like economically beneficial for black people, and they're like, oh, well, I'll give you $10, and then it just sits there for months. But somebody down the street, they ain't even from here, we've got a pub. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, and so I think that's one of the things that I've been kind of really paying attention to, just like the disparity of that and the goals and meeting that. Because I think for me, I was like, I really want this to be met too. Yeah. So, you know, just turning on that brain of like, how can we basically champion this and make it happen? Because the thing is that, you know, I think lots of people maybe have had little bits of visions, but it still takes the person to say, I'm going to do this and I want to do this, that we have to kind of back in a certain way because, you know, there are lots of things about running a place, but it actually can make such a difference to like basically have that enterprising, that merchant, that experience of being able to go and get your goods, like period. Like, you know what I mean? And so I think there's a part of that vision that I wanted to kind of bring in here too, just to kind of, you know, amplify that. that goal. And there's a GoFundMe that's active and has been active for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think needs more community investment. I think it's an investment thing,
Yeah.
like, in some ways, a bigger investment, really.
Yeah. Like, I've been offered spaces, but I'm like, I am just an artist and I'm a mom. I can't afford to keep the lights on if nobody wants to, like, help me do these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have vendors and we don't know if their stuff's gonna sell. Like, we have no idea. And the pandemic, so people are afraid to go to these places. And I'm just, like, not sure. So I couldn't really, like, say yes. But there's been opportunities. People are like, I'll give you this space. It's literally very small.
Yeah.
Like a little small pop-up, but even that would have been beneficial if I could actually keep the lights on. I just need a boost, which is something that I can't get right now. So.
Anything else that anyone's thinking about?
I just want to say this is very black, because black people talk forever. This is a black people time. This is a black thing. Yeah, we could have talked forever.
Yeah. Then we dance, so you can do Jackson.
Yeah, dance.
Music. Yeah, I mean, if there's, we can end it and have a little bit more not formal, if there's any questions that folks want to ask one-on-one.
But you're on the right track. We should say thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for choosing me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to turn the things
Yes.
off.
Okay.
So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Unscripted.
Yeah, I love unscripted.
Me too.
stuff.
I can do it. I
Yeah.
can do it with people who it works with. Otherwise, it doesn't work. I'm like audience participation. I love that. Like, yes, questions.
Yeah, like I'm not a really big fan of structure. Like, here, follow this itinerary. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it authentically and get the best out of it.
Yes.
I get so nervous when things are like, oh my god, I can't even read now. I just go out the window.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brayden. Thanks for this. Yes. You might be able to see the stars. This is the best part.